All right, you are now live.
Good afternoon. This is a meeting of the Active Transportation Advisory Committee for HRM. My name is Hugh Millward. I will be chairing the meeting. And we will begin with a roll call just to ensure that everyone has both their video and audio on, since it's required that HRM requires that video and audio are required for live streaming. So, as I said, my name is Hugh Millward. Douglas Webmore is Vice Chairperson. Hello, Douglas. Can you?
Hello, Hugh.
Okay, good. Councillor Cottle. Are you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Holly Woodill is not going to be with us today. She has sent her regrets. Milena Casanavicius.
Milena has not joined us yet.
Oh, okay. Peter Zimmer.
Peter Zimmer hasn't joined us yet either.
Oh, Paul Young. Your audio's not on, Paul.
There, I'll click it again. Okay, very good. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Miles McCormick.
Present.
Hello, Miles.
Hello, Hugh.
Michelle Mahoney.
Michelle hasn't joined us yet.
Okay. Brittany McLean.
I'm here, thanks.
Hello. For some reason, I've got Miles McCormick twice on my roll call.
It's only one.
You're here twice, Miles.
That's always good.
And Elizabeth Pugh.
I am here.
Hello, Elizabeth. We don't have your video. Okay. Has Annika Ropel joined?
He has joined. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, Annika. Yes. Good.
I'm working on setting my video up.
Oh, okay. All right. So hopefully the others will join shortly. We have staff members with us. David McIsaac is manager of Active Transportation. Hello, David.
Hey, everybody.
And Elizabeth McDonald is our legislative assistant.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Elizabeth. And Lucas Pitts, director of Traffic Management, is supposed to be joining us.
He is here. Yep.
Hello, Lucas. And finally, Emma Martin, Community Programs Coordinator for Active Transportation. Emma?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here. Yes.
Okay, very good. So we'll proceed with the land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes, the circulated minutes for September 21st. I'll call for a motion to approve those minutes. I need a mover and seconder.
I can move that, Hugh. Douglas here.
Douglas moves and...
I can second.
Which one?
Doesn't matter.
I think Councillor Cattell had that one. Were there any issues then with those minutes as circulated? Hearing none, I'll move. I'll ask the question. All those in favour of approval, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
And anyone opposed, please say nay or raise your hand. So those are approved unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to item 3, approval of the order of business and approval of any additions or deletions to the agenda. Elizabeth, have there been any additions or deletions?
There are no additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. So again, I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda, the order of business. I need a mover and seconder. Anyone moving?
I can move it here.
Thank you, Miles. And seconder?
I can second it.
Thank you, Paul. And I'll ask the question. Those in favor of approval as circulated, please say, excuse me, so aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
And anyone opposed, please say nay or raise your hand. You're showing, oh, okay, no one opposed. So that's good. The agenda is as approved and as circulated. Item 4, business arising out of the minutes, there is none. Item 5 is call for declaration of conflict of interest. If any committee member has or feels they have a conflict of interest relating to an agenda item, now is the time to declare it. And hearing none, we'll move on. Item 6, consideration of deferred business, there is none. And item 7, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Again, there are no items under that item. Item 8, information items brought forward, there are none. Item 9, reports and discussion. And we'll first hear from staff. Emma Martin will present on the Active Transportation Grants Program. And are you ready to do so, Emma?
So Emma, I'm promoting you to
Yes, as
co-host.
soon as Elizabeth will.
Sorry, go ahead, Emma. Are you ready to present?
Seems like your audio isn't working quite right. We're not really able to hear you.
Okay. Emma, we're viewing your screen, but there's nothing on it. Emma, we're not hearing you either.
You see
Oh.
the
We're able to see your screen, but it's still your audio is cutting out a lot. We can always move on to the next item if
This-
Emma needs.
Yeah, it looks like we're having problems with
does
your audio.
this work better? I turned off.
No, you're still breaking up, Emma. We can't hear you. I think we should move on to the next item and come back to Emma, hopefully. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Then item 9.1.2 is the proposed 2024 meeting schedule. That was distributed to members in your package, and that some members may have questions regarding the fall dates, in which case Elizabeth says she is happy to answer any questions, but I'll call for a motion to get this on the floor. We need a mover and a seconder.
I can move this discussion, Hugh. Douglas here.
Thank you, Douglas. And a seconder, please.
Can second that.
Okay, Paul. Are there any issues or questions? In which case, I'll direct you to Elizabeth. Well, hearing none.
I haven't had a chance to even look at them. Is there something you can put on the screen so we can see what the dates are? And I don't actually see it in the package easily anyway.
Right, I can share my screen.
Yep.
So what would have come in the package is item 9.1.2. I'll bring it up on my screen just a moment there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go.
And I do have one question related to it actually, which is the one for November 2024, which specifies no meeting. Just curious
Oh,
why that was. I'm assuming it probably has something to do with timelines for next year.
Yeah, so that has to do with here. I'm just going to bring it up on my screen. Is everyone able to see the schedule?
Yes.
yes.
Schedule? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the fall dates for next year have been impacted by the upcoming municipal election for 2024. The reason being is that we aren't really able, I shouldn't say we aren't able to have meetings, but it's not encouraged to have meetings during the election time.
Yep.
So we aren't able to have any meetings. I believe it's after the first week of September, once nominations begin. So that's why there's no September meeting, and we opted for a meeting in August instead of September. All meetings scheduled in October of 2024 are to be if required only. Once again, that's due to the election. We only want meetings to occur if it's absolutely necessary and there's a specific item that the committee wishes to meet on. And same with November, the first 3 weeks of November, or I guess it maybe is 2.5, is before the swearing in ceremony. And then there's the Municipal Federation of Municipalities Conference that all the councillors will be attending at the end of November. So that's the reason that there's no November meeting on this proposed schedule, but we do have a meeting in December. That being said, even if the schedule is approved, the committee is still able to meet whenever it wishes. If you wish to call a meeting at an alternate date, we can certainly look into that.
I think that's what I figured. Just wanted to get some
Yeah,
clarification.
No, for sure.
Thank you very
It
much.
looks different than our schedule for 2023 for sure.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Elizabeth. Any other questions or issues? If not, we've already got a mover and seconder, so we'll move to a motion. Those in favor of the schedule as shown, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposed, please raise your hand or say no. Nay. None opposed, so that's approved. Thank you very much. So I'm wondering if we should go back just to Emma's talk. Emma, do you think you can try again? No, not hearing from Emma. All right, we'll move on to the next item then. And the next item is a staff.
Can you hear?
You're still not coming through, Emma. So we'll move to the staff update from where are we? From David McIsaac. David, are you ready to give your update?
Yeah, I can give my update. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So just going to highlight a few things happening in the group right now. We are preparing for public engagement in 5 rural communities for the Rural New Sidewalk Program. We're meeting with community stakeholders right now and looking to do most of our engagement in the winter. So that would be for sidewalks in places like Musquodoboit Harbor, Porter's Lake, Cupboards, Lucasville, places like that. And the first step is to find out if the residents are willing to pay more taxes in order to be eligible for a sidewalk. Second thing, we're doing a lot of work right now to develop the capital budget for next year. So you will probably start to see some projects and project lists going to council. I think it happens in December. Pretty happy. I think we got some really good AT projects next year, some healthy budgets. And once those lists and that budget are out, happy to provide more information to the committee. Working through next steps on shared micromobility. So we are getting ready on two fronts. One, we're going to come back to council with some updates to the micromobility bylaw, shared micromobility bylaw. And roughly at the same time, we're going to issue our request for proposals for a company or two to operate bike share and e-scooter share. So our goal right now is to be able to implement, at least start implementing that in 2024. Well, Emma, we got lots of good stuff happening on grants to nonprofit groups that Emma was going to talk about. I won't, maybe we'll hear from her this meeting, but so I won't talk about that. Last point, we are going to be reaching out to key stakeholder groups, Halifax Cycling Coalition, Walk and Roll, Ecology Action Center, Cycle Nova Scotia, CNIB, just to take them through the results of the value engineering process for the McDonald Bridge Halifax side bikeway connector and give them a sense of where we're at and where we might be going and get their feedback. So that's going to be teed up probably in the next 2-3 weeks. There's lots of other stuff going on, but I guess those are some of the highlights. And if there's any questions about that or anything else, happy to respond to those now or, follow up after the committee meeting with members. Thank you.
Okay, David, thank you. I'll just quickly go through the speaking list again to see if people do have questions or concerns. Peter Zimmer, did Peter join us?
Peter has not joined us.
Oh, okay. Paul Young?
I have no questions, but it sounds like really interesting work. So I hope to hear back from some of those consultations. I think that's awesome.
Okay, thank you. Miles McCormick?
I have no questions here.
Okay, thank you, Miles. Michelle Mahoney?
Michelle still isn't in the meeting.
Oh, she still didn't join. Okay.
No.
Brittany McLean?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Brittany. Annika Ropel?
Yeah, I guess really quick question. What's the overlap between the sidewalks or potential sidewalks in Lucasville and the Greenway project that community is working on? Would those be in partnership or are those separate?
They're the same thing. They're the same thing. So when we talk about the rural sidewalk program, is really the rural community sidewalk or multi-use pathway program. So they're kind of interchangeable. But it's very connected. Whatever happens in Lucasville will be part of that rural AT program. And we're already, we're kind of doing 30% design at the same time in the expectation that we will get the go-ahead for the area rate.
Great. I know folks are going to be very excited both there and in the other communities you were talking about. So very excited to see those.
Okay, very good. Elizabeth Pugh?
No questions. Thanks, David. Just obviously very interested in how the rural stuff keeps going. So keep me posted.
Okay. Douglas Wetmore.
Questions from me tonight. Thank you. Questions
Okay, Douglas.
from me tonight. Thank you.
And Councillor Cuttle?
That'll is it. Thank you. I just have a question.
I guess I know you're working on a list of projects that you'll let us know about at a future date. I'm wondering where an updated active transit plan fits into this.
So basically the current active transportation plan, ends right around now. So either we were just talking about this. We're setting our kind of performance goals and our targets for what we're going to do next fiscal year. And working on a new active transportation plan is part of that. The current plan is sort of expired in 2023. We've acted and, worked on pretty much everything there. Didn't accomplish everything, but we've, so it's time for a refresh, and it's going to be a priority next year. Whether we can do it all next year, I think is doubtful, but it's going to be something that we spend more time on. The other thing that's happening, I guess, that the committee should be aware of is that we will be, I think there is an intention to bring an update to the overall regional plan to council late winter, early spring. There's been some public consultation on that. And really what we'll do on the active transportation plan will feed from or stem from recommendation and direction from that updated regional plan. Because the AT plan is kind of a child of the mobility chapter in that general regional plan.
Okay, so I mean, I'm particularly interested in seeing community-based active transit plans develop, looking at our growth centers outside of the regional center for communities like Fairview, Clayton Park, and Spryfield. And, just feel that there's some urgency around that in regards to looking at all of these new development proposals that are happening and how we integrate AT into that. I guess the question would be, when you look at the integrated mobility plan and the regional plan, anyways, I'm just thinking about Bill 137 and how we even talk about that, because I had a couple of committees shut down around talking around how anything to do with planning. But this falls under, AT falls under transportation.
We're in the Public Works Department, yeah.
Okay.
But anytime there's a new development application or any kind of planning process, we get pulled in. So there's anything, for example, that's getting built off of Herring Cove Road out in your district are projects that we look at. That generally come in pretty good in terms of like what they're offering for active transportation. Where it kind of, what we struggle with is what happens when those new developments get to Herring Cove Road and end in a ditch or a paved shoulder. So not really, the right active transportation infrastructure. So that's a focus.
Right. And that's why I really like, and I'm just going to put this in here again, because, it's a pet project of mine and a pet peeve in that if we don't have active transit plans for communities, we don't really know where we're hooking into. Like, is Herring Cove Road the place, or do we use the McIntosh Community Trail? I can't speak to other communities, but, I look at what happened with Dartmouth North, where there was a good inventory done of existing routes, gaps in routes, destinations, and there was a plan developed about how you connect a community, not just connecting to a main road, which keeps people in high traffic zones, as opposed to looking for opportunities to build networks internally through communities. And from what I've seen from development applications, we're missing key connectors, like where we have cul-de-sacs that end with no right of way through to a community trail that exists on the other side, on the back side of a lot, where you could put in a pathway and actually make it way more efficient and effective to get around without a car. But you don't put those pathways in at that stage then people have to walk through this labyrinth of cul-de-sacs and roads to get to the AT trail, and all of a sudden what could be easy becomes more of a challenge. And so I'm not seeing in my position how those dots are connecting, and it's raising concerns. So I know we have another discussion about this going on, and I got sidetracked with another issue this week. But I mean, I will follow up on those other emails I sent that you did reply to. Thank you very much. But you know, I just, with all the growth and development happening right now, I just feel we're missing the, you know, I was going to say missing the boat, but maybe we're missing the bike, and how we bring this all together. So I hope
I'd
in
say
the new
one
active
challenge
plan.
is that there's a lot of stuff that was approved like 10 years ago that hasn't been built yet. And a lot of that's kind of embedded, like we can't change it anymore. So there was probably some missed opportunities back in, you know, 2014 and 2012 when some of that stuff was approved. Anyway, I don't disagree.
One of them was last
think
year.
there's
The one I'm talking about was last year we approved it. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm wrong. Sorry.
I mean, there's some old stuff, I'm sure, but there's some current things going on. But I don't know how the local knowledge is getting connected to the planning department if nobody's has a keen eye on it, or there's no overall concept. But I look forward. Let's sit down and we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this through our other conversation.
Okay. Yeah, clearly there's an issue, and I guess actually Paul said in the chat that he wasn't sure. Was it Bill 157? Did you say?
Bill 137.
137. Okay. But Paul wasn't sure what that was, and maybe you could briefly explain to the committee.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what it is either, but I was in a meeting yesterday with the Western Common Advisory Committee, which is looking at building several kilometers of all-access trail into a wilderness park, which I hope will be hooked up to a blue route along the 333. And we weren't allowed to talk about anything that has to do with planning and development. Because the provincial government passed a bill that excludes recommendations coming from advisory committees. So okay. I am trying to chat with legal to determine what's permitted to be discussed and not permitted to be discussed in how it fits together. And in this case, we weren't allowed to talk about an organic waste facility, which I couldn't see the connection to planning with that, but apparently there's a connection. So it's a concern right now about how it's affecting our advisory committees.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let's wrap this up with in relation to David McIsaac's presentation. I think the only person I haven't asked is Milena Casanavicius.
I'm here, Mr. Chair. You sound as bad as me. David, first of all, I just want to say kudos on the mayor's bike ride, and to Catherine in particular, who put the shuttle for the buses together, a long time awaited. I was very happy to see that. Second, this is something current. I'm not sure if the committee has seen it, or even you have seen it yourself, David, but it kind of piggybacks on what is happening and what is going on with infrastructure. Matt Pinder, P-I-N-D-E-R, I believe. I got this report from Bill Campbell. CNIB did a study with WSP as well, where it very clearly stated that floating bus stops and bike lanes do not work for people who are blind and partially sighted, i.e. what we have already placed in on, just let me catch my breath here, on South Park. And I'm wondering if you've seen that report. If you have not, I will find a way to send that to you and to the rest of the committee. It is quite in depth. You know, there are some cyclists who are lobbying for moving the cycle tracks off. I would just like to know, and I hope that we are not going to be putting any more floating bus stops. I know that there's going to be already some going into some of the new infrastructure. I think it's Dumbrack or somewhere around there. Having talked to some of the HRM staff, they don't work. And for those who don't understand, it means there's a sidewalk, then you cross a bike lane, and then you step on the bus. To me, it is dangerous for everyone. My only solution, good luck with this, is that potentially you could propose to HRM Transit to put stop signs. The technology is there. It's on the yellow buses for kids. It's on the Accessibus to stop cyclists, because cyclists aren't watching. And I don't like standing in the bike lane waiting for the bus. And of that, so if you have seen this report, is there anything that you know about it? And if not, then I will send it along and we can discuss at another meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, we know about the report. We don't even have any floating bus stops, so all we have are shared bus stop bike lane situations. Our streets aren't even wide enough to have the islands. So I think, you know, there's going to have to be a decision made in the future about, you know, streets like South Park. Either we take the bike lane off, or, you know, because that's the only way we have a protected bike lane there, or transit off. And that's kind of what we're faced with. So I guess we can talk. It's a big topic. So it's probably something, you know, if we want to talk about, if this committee wants to make a recommendation on it, that might help staff and council kind of, you know, chart a course forward. But you know, we have shared bus stop bike lanes on South Park Street, on Hollis Street, likely next year on Lower Water Street, and the place that people are waiting, or it's kind of on the sidewalk or you know, on a bus stop, and then when the bus comes up, the bikes are supposed to yield to the pedestrians and the people getting on and off the bus. Well, that's kind of the arrangement, and it's a tough challenge for everybody to figure out what the best thing to do is.
Well, I'll send that around and then we can discuss whether we want to bring it to the committee or not. But my opinion is this will be the only time that I will say, and you know, I'm a huge promoter for all things cycling. I'm sorry, these people, those who cycle, and I love cycling, you see me out everywhere. My life is too valuable to be run over by a cyclist or be caught in the bike lane amongst everything else in between. That's all I will say. But thank you.
Okay, Milena.
I'll say, I mean, I haven't heard any, like, we have not received on our side, you know, any reports of incidents, but that doesn't mean they haven't happened. But so far, they seem to have been working. But again, if this committee wants more detailed information or wants to recommend a direction in the future for staff and HRM on this, I think it's worth discussing.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Now I've seen in the chat that it may be that Emma Martin is ready to make her presentation. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
I'm hoping that you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear and see you.
Oh, perfect. So Elizabeth has agreed to share her screen with everyone, and hopefully you'll hear me through my cell phone. So today I will be presenting the Active Transportation Grants Program overview and the awards that were given out to organizations in the fiscal year 2023-2024. If you want to move the slide, please. Okay, So aside from the overview, I will also shortly present the timelines for the next fiscal year as well, and we'll have an opportunity for question and answers. Next slide. So as you are familiar, the Active Transportation Priorities Plan, MAP 3 vision identified that some of the connections will be built with the support of trail associations who have a letter of authority to develop and maintain corridors from landowners such as the province, HRM, government, and other entities. And the MAP 3, the green lines show the vision of all trails. And so the active transportation grants are funding only those corridors who are identified on this map. Next slide, please. The active transportation grant is administered through the administrative order respecting the HRM's grant programs for active transportation and recreational trails, shorted for 2020-011 ADM, that was adopted by the Regional Council in 2019. It is for the AT program is formed of 5 streams: capital, recapitalization, emergency reinstatement, education and promotion, and maintenance and operations. The first 4 are approved through the capital budget and follow the capital budget process. The maintenance and operations is approved through the operational budget process. The AT grants program is in depth outlined on our halifax.ca website, and the actual link is provided on the slide. Next slide, please. So the 5 grant streams are the AT Capital Grant that is awarded to support new multi-use pathways and their associated structures and amenities. The AT Recapitalization is awarded to support projects to reinstate existing multi-use pathways or improve the accessibility, amenities, and structures on those existing multi-use pathways. The AT Maintenance and Operations is awarded to assist with costs related to maintenance of existing corridors, as well as operational expenses directly related to maintaining these corridors. The AT Education and Promotion Grants is awarded to assist municipalities' active transportation objectives, included but not limited to safety programs, educational skills, training programs, promotion and engagement, marketing programs that are meant to create awareness and encourage residents to use the active transportation corridors that have been built. And active transportation emergency repair grants are awarded to support those costs associated with emergency maintenance repairs that might come in between grant intakes. So during the year, during the fiscal year. Next slide, please. In 2023, capital grants were approved through the Regional Council capital budget at $244,000 in various locations within HRM. Projects varied between amenities installation, building a new corridor in Lower Sackville, and installing benches in Sackville. Next slide, please. The recapitalization projects also have taken various forms, from embankment stabilization to mitigate erosion control due to climate change issues. Atlantic View Trail has a trail reinstatement, so they are going through multiple phases and are reinstating the corridor to ensure that it's wide enough for active transportation users, and it is cleared of vegetation to improve sightlines. We're working with the Blueberry Run Trail for a reinstatement plan. They have completed their consultation project, and they have started their construction phase 1. And the other groups have done mandatory bridge inspections and refurbished display boxes at trailheads. Next slide, please. Approximate location of projects within the corridors where projects are approved are showcased here on the map. So it will give you a visual of where the projects are located. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the Sackville Lakes Parks and Trails Association has been working towards achieving a connection between the Sackville Lakes Provincial Park entrance, excuse me, at one end, where the Great Oak Trail finishes, and towards the Windsor Junction through the park, because the grade is much lower than over Cowicket Road. And they are in their final stages of finalizing that corridor. Next slide, please. The Atlantic View Trail, I've already mentioned that they are going through recapitalization, and these are some pictures from their construction progress. Next slide, please. The Blueberry Run has, as I mentioned, started their first phase of construction with vegetation clearing and widening of the trail and compaction. And they will be looking for their next phase to start reinstating the trail with resurfacing and reditching in various sections within the corridor until they will be completing the entire section between the Causeway to Stella Drive. Next slide, please. Gatesbrook have had some improvements and amenities building. They have an accessible vault toilet built and fencing and barriers to direct users towards safer locations at intersections with driveways or roads or parking lots. Next slide, please. The 2024-25 capital budget process has started, which means we have already received capital projects and recapitalization projects proposals for the next fiscal year, and we are now in evaluation of those proposals. And they will be put through the capital budget, so you'll be able to review them when those are made available to public. Next slide, please. In terms of the maintenance grants, we have awarded over $105,000 towards those trail associations for maintaining active transportation corridors. along the entire HRM from Eastern Shore to South Shore to up towards Lower Sackville, Mastodon and Carroll's Corner. So it is across the entire HRM. Next slide, please. The AT maintenance and operations for 2024-2025 will be issuing proposals in February, and we will expect the proposal submission deadline in March 4th for projects that would take place in the fiscal year of 2024-2025. Next slide, please. The HRM Active Transportation Education and Promotion Grant is divided in 3 types of projects. Small projects under $1,000 tend to be a one-time event located within one community. Large community projects are large events or projects with a broader audience that might see participants from various communities. And major project grants are those grants who would be significant logistics, have partnerships from various organizations, duration efforts, both for planning and implementation are of significant duration. And as I mentioned before, they meet the active transportation objectives identified through the IMP. Next slide, please. These are the AT education and promotion has 2 intakes, one for spring and summer and one for fall and winter. The spring-summer intake, awarded $24,000 for various projects, from very small projects such as trail user engagement in the Cole Harbor area to major event, Open Street Dartmouth, to promotional materials such as the Share the Road, car magnets, and the Nova Scotia Bike Summit, which participation was from everywhere in Nova Scotia, not just HRM, and an annual event in Lucasville. Next slide, please. The fall-winter awarded $34,320. There are various projects from enhancing trail management with trail counting data, to reinstating a bike hub in the Deanery in Ship Harbor, continuing projects from the previous grant, such as the winter cycling experience, funding a brand new cycling guide by the Halifax Cycling Coalition, funding the Agricola Holiday Open Street that just happened this past weekend, funding the Halloween walk for all ages and abilities on Gatesbrook Greenway. Next slide, please. So those are some snippets from the events that projects that we have supported. Nova Scotia Bike Summit, I mentioned, had 80 participants from various organizations, had 3 panels, Provincial AT Strategy, the Active Transportation Project Implementation, and Active Trails Community. It showcased the active transportation work of various organizations through a fair, and had trail cycling and walking tour on the McIntosh Trail community trail and had 80 breakout conversations. So it was overall a very successful event. Next slide, please. The Dartmouth Open Streets, it is a yearly event. It brings upwards to 5,000 people. It encourages walking and cycling on streets that normal has very high vehicular traffic. So it opens the street to public to use AT to access the businesses and events alongside the roads. Next slide, please. Another event that is annual in Lucasville, organized by the Lucasville Greenway Society to promote active transportation and get community engaged and supportive of their active transportation vision along the Lucasville corridor. Especially that Lucasville is one of those corridors who are included in the AT Rural program. So it is a great opportunity to create support for Lucasville. Next slide. So in terms of next year, we're looking at April 8th as submission deadline for spring-summer AT education and promotion grants, and September 23rd for fall-winter intake timelines. Next slide, please. HRM supports the community groups beyond AT grants. We're allowing for amounts that are under 5,000, sole sourcing and making grant disbursements immediately, so small organizations can implement their projects more easily if they don't have enough funds to upfront. We are providing forum for discussions, training and mentoring on opportunities on topics such as planning, construction, maintenance, and recapitalization, and organizational development. Some of those groups are not at engineering level, so they always need support through their throughout their projects. The HRM, the Nova Scotia Province, the Nova Scotia Trails, the Trans-Canada Trail, and many other organizations are currently supporting the Marine Riders Trails Association to reinstate the Blueberry Run. And so we have meetings regularly with them to support them with scope identification, project phasing, and funds management. The HRM is also the municipal representative designating the Nova Scotia Trail Strategy Coordinating Group. They have various projects such as trail etiquette programs, data. They're doing a trails impact study and trails inventory project to map out all trails inventory, so it facilitates their management easier. HRM Parks operations have provided tremendous support to those groups who have a license agreement with HRM, who were met by the disasters in the recent months. So the flood had quite a bit of an impact in Sackville, so the parks operation supported them on both the Bedford-Sackville connector, but also on Sackville Greenway and other locations where groups were overwhelmed by the complexity of the cleanup. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the administrative order that is directing the active transportation grants are also directing the recreational trails, and we work collaboratively with the parks to support the grants program. You can find more information about the grants program on the Parks Trails recreational trails site. Next slide, please. So they received, in terms of capital grants, some new grants that they approved. A connection between the Porter's Lake Canal to the Atlantic View Trail consultation, and they've carried over some projects from previous years, such as the boardwalk reinstatement shown in the picture on the slide, and Macintosh Watershed, single track trails, and hiking trail building, and a trail system in the mainland North Common in Halifax. Next slide, please. In terms of recreational trails maintenance, there were awarded $50,000, 475, but they had some projects carried over from previous year. Next slide, please. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for listening. I hope you attended the Agricola Holiday Market. That was another event that we supported. If you have any questions, I'm open to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. We are kind of tight for time, I think, because of Paul Young's presentation. That may lead to quite a discussion. So let's just let me just ask, who does anyone have a particular question or comment to make to Emma? Yes, Brittany, would you go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say that Cycling Nova Scotia really appreciates, especially the education and promotion grants. We've received a couple of them over the past couple of years. Emma had already mentioned the Bike Summit. Without the HRM's partnership, it probably would have been a lot harder to put on the Bike Summit. So we really appreciated their support throughout it. They had staff who were helping us out with the event. And then they had staff, Emma, who actually hosted some of the panels during the day. So just a shout out to say thank you to HRM. We definitely appreciate these grant opportunities, and to everyone else, they're great. So the application process is quite easy as well. We've never had any issues with that. They go very seamlessly. So just saying, they're very well run. Thanks.
Thank you, Brittany. Anyone else have a comment or question? I don't see a hand up, so I think we'll conclude there and move on to Paul's presentation. So item 9.2.1, Paul Young. Paul is going to speak on the topic of Slow the Blazes Down. Are you ready to make your presentation, Paul?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, Elizabeth is going to run the slides. I'm going to have my own set that I'll be looking at, that I've annotated. I'm going to drop off a video and join back up on video at the end. Before I get going, I realize that I'm going to try to make a compelling case for why we should be doing this. But I realize the elephant in the room is likely what's going to generate the huge amount of discussion is, do we even have the authority to make this kind of change in the HRM where it's currently a provincial jurisdiction? So let's see if I can drop off a video. Okay, here we go. So great name, Slow the Blazes Down. Thank you, Peter Zimmerman, for that. It's certainly a good start, catchy. But I wanted to also point out that, this is not just, changing speed limit signs. It's a major behavioral change. It really is. It changes a lot of different things and has the potential to change the way people think about how they get around and what they do to get around. So let's move along. Okay, so the purpose of this presentation is to start the conversation. Hang on, sorry, here we go. Start the conversation towards a change in urban speed limits in the HRM. So the purpose is to start the conversation. But what I wanted to do was position an urban speed limit change nationally and internationally. Like, what are other people doing? So I've collected some information, and you'll see a little bit of that. And in addition to that, so I've cited other jurisdictions that have investigated or even implemented urban speed limit restrictions. So again, I've got lots of information on that. We'll have a little summary in this presentation, but there's a lot more information and links to, so much information it'll bear you. So again, the point of this is to summarize the report, which contains important information and links. So let's move on to the next slide. So what are we talking about here? So we want to look at the feasibility and details of reducing speed limits in urban HRM, so residential areas, to 30 kilometers an hour. Now, it's 30 kilometers an hour, not just reducing them. There's something magical about 30 kilometers an hour. So what are the benefits? Reduction in death and injury, that's the most obvious one, with corresponding reduction in health emergency services. There's oodles and oodles of information that supports this. And this is the thing that isn't necessarily obvious, is that there's also an increase in perceived safety, that people feel safer to do active transportation. And that's kind of that whole modal change that we're kind of aiming for. So, if people feel more safe on the roads, it potentially leads to changes in behaviors towards increased active behavior, active transportation, which has the potential to increase social interaction and cohesion. And, when enough people do that, it has it will reduce the climate impact. So there's broad advantages to doing this. So to help improve personal health and well-being, reduce stress, noise, and pollution. So this is, kind of broadly about environmental changes as well for future generations. Next slide. Okay, so is this really new? It sounded revolutionary when I started looking at it, but it's not. Calgary in 2021 changed its speed limits to 40 kilometers an hour. Edmonton, always in competition with Calgary, 2 years later did the same thing on most residential roads. Toronto has been at it since May of 2015, and they've gone to 30 kilometers an hour. On some, not all Toronto. If you think of Toronto as a broad area that includes Mississauga and all sorts of other bureaus, some of them have moved to to the 30 kilometer an hour speed limit. Montreal's kind of the same thing. It's patchwork of speed limits. Côte des Neiges and NDG and Dorval have moved once, the first in 2018 and the other in 2021. So these things are happening. They're happening, reasonably not too far in the past. So this is current. Amsterdam and Wales are two international examples that I wanted to cite, because Amsterdam is moving there next month, and they're basically doing the same thing to 30 kilometers an hour on most residential roads. And Wales, I think, is just, I have a lot of information from Wales as part of my presentation and report. And they've just moved there 2 months ago. And they went to 32 kilometers an hour for the whole jurisdiction on residential roads. So there's all sorts of information for Wales and Amsterdam, Toronto, and Edmonton in the supporting documents. And the other thing I want to mention is only a sample of the larger Canadian cities did I look at to do this. So I didn't look at them all, and I didn't exclude ones that didn't have anything going on. And the last thing I want to note on this slide before I move on is the dates, and I kind of already touched on that, is that this is current, but it's also happening. It's not something that's going to happen in the future, maybe. So moving on. Okay, so the next couple slides get pretty complicated. And there's a lot of reading, and I apologize. I hope you had a chance to look at them beforehand. I'm not going to try to condense them because some of the wording here is really important. So in terms of international findings on effects of lower speed limits on collisions and injuries, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is kind of an important body, reported that research consistently shows that lower speed limits reduce death and injuries. Well, I mean, that's kind of obvious, but you know, sometimes you have to have a report to kind of rely on to say that. So safety benefits of reduced speeds in urban areas were recognized in 2020 at the Global Ministerial Conference on Road Safety, which was hosted by the Swedish government in collaboration with the World Health Organization. Again, these are not slouches. These are important international bodies. The resulting Stockholm Declaration was adopted by government ministers and other stakeholders and includes the Resolution 2. And again, I apologize for reading this, but it's important to get the exact words here. So they agreed to focus on speed management, including the strengthening of law enforcement to prevent speeding and mandate a maximum road travel speed of 30 kilometers an hour in areas where vulnerable road users and vehicles mix in a frequent planned manner, noting that efforts to reduce speed in general will have the beneficial impact on air quality and climate change, as well as being vital to reduce road traffic deaths and injuries. So you're going to see this, you know, I can go on, and I will a little bit, I apologize, but it is important to kind of hear how much research there is and how strong a case there is. So I'll just go quickly through this slide. So again, more effects of lower speeds on collisions and injuries. Okay, and they're quite remarkable. The higher the speed, the longer it takes to stop a vehicle, and the greater harm or impact. Well, that's pretty obvious. But this next point is really quite important. At a point where a 20-mile-per-hour car would have stopped, a 30-mile-per-hour car would still be doing 24 miles per hour. That's, you know, when you stop and you think about that, that's a little bit sobering. The risk of being killed is almost 5 times higher in collisions between a car and a pedestrian at 50 kilometers an hour compared to the same collision at 30 kilometers an hour. Research by the Transportation Research Laboratory, this is in Wales, has shown that the urban roads with lower average speeds, there's an average of 6% reduction in collisions with each 1 mile per hour reduction in average speed. So, I mean, every little thing that happens that can change can make a big
Paul,
difference.
I think you missed a slide advance.
Oh, did I?
I think so.
Hang on.
2 of 2. You're on. I just switched to 2 of 2. I was on page 1 of 2 before.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'm on 2 of 2.
Okay, now I'm on 2 of 2.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Hopefully you were listening. You don't want me to read them again. You know, they're quite remarkable, these statistics, and they're quite sobering. This last point, the last point on slide 6 is quite interesting as well. Is road traffic injury is also strongly associated with poverty. Child pedestrian deaths in deprived neighborhoods are over 4 times those in affluent neighborhoods. So reducing speeds through the application of an area-wide 20 mile per hour, 30 kilometer per hour speed limits would help reduce health inequalities. So that's something that I wouldn't have thought of, but our friends in Wales were able to, you know, put this together. All right, so moving on to slide 7. And again, I'm sorry. I know this is boring as heck, but I'm going to read this slide almost word for word because this mostly comes from the Wales summary, And I could not possibly cite it any better. So Wales is one of the first countries in the world to have a default 20-mile-per-hour speed limit on the roads. So they're proud of that, and well, they should be, where cars mix with pedestrians and cyclists. This next paragraph is really something. A much wider take-up of 20-mile-per-hour limits is expected to achieve significant road safety benefits, which we kind of touched on, particularly in deprived neighborhoods. In the longer term, reductions in the perception of road danger is expected to lead to more walking and cycling, which will improve public health and replace some short car journeys, and so achieve further reductions in collisions and casualties. It just keeps building upon itself. More walking and cycling is also likely to lead to greater social cohesion, which brings to further societal, environmental, and health benefits. Lower speeds will lead to reductions in traffic noise, which impacts on air quality, which will be, on air quality, which will be neutral at worst, while journey time increases will be slight. Evidence shows that most people support 20-mile-per-hour speed limits, although they may wrongly perceive themselves as being in a minority. Now, this is in Wales. All of this is in Wales, but I'm quite confident that we could do the same thing here in Nova Scotia or all across Canada and find the same thing. So this last point is just a little bit on the technical side. Lowering traffic speeds in urban areas should be seen as a major behavioral change project. This will require sophisticated communications and marketing strategy based on social unacceptability for speeding in residential areas and backed up by strong enforcement in the early stages. So it kind of makes sense. This next slide, I'm on slide 8. I've just moved to the Wales case for change, road traffic collisions and casualties. This is a brutal slide. I apologize. Okay. I'm not going to go through each of these. I hope that you've had a chance to look at them. All I've done is I've pulled out the statistics from Wales. There's about 3 million people in Wales. It's about 6 times the size of the HRM. And the first 3 points, I'm not going to go over. They're just hard. They're just hard statistics. But the last point I want to highlight, the largest proportion of these serious or fatal casualties occurred on roads with a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. So it matters changing the speed limit in built-up residential areas. That's where the biggest impact can be made in terms of safety. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Road safety is more than casualty reduction. And, I've touched on this, but I'm going to go into it again. It's not just safety. It's about the perception of risk of harm at the individual, community, and society levels. According to British Crime Survey, and again, I doubt that there's much difference, a lot different in Canada, speeding traffic was rated as one of the most serious problems. Both genders and all age groups in this study are reported as the greatest problem in local communities, i.e. a perceived lack of safety. So the next point, again, they take that one step further. And this kind of goes back to the meeting that we had last month that unfortunately I was unable to attend. Loss of children's independent mobility is a key factor on casualty reduction, how casualty reduction alone cannot deliver a healthier, safer society. So, but what we're basically saying here is that, children aren't allowed to walk to school or ride their bikes to school because their parents are afraid of their safety. So instead, they pile their kids in the car and drive them, and we just make the problem even worse. So, again, this is another benefit of a global 30-kilometer-an-hour in residential areas speed limit change. Okay, I'm just trying to keep things fast. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, now we're talking about active transportation. So that's kind of right our meat and butter. Boy, that does our Bread and butter, there you go. I must be hungry, it's dinner time. So active transportation is good for people's mental and physical health. Well, that's kind of why we're all here. So when it replaces a car trip, it will reduce carbon emissions and improve air quality. More walking and cycling produce a more cohesive and safe communities. You talk to your neighbors, when you're not surrounded by glass. Streets that enable and encourage active transit are key to increased active travel. Slower travel speeds are important to reducing people's perception of road danger, thus encouraging more people to walk and cycle. And all across the UK, they've piloted this, and they've reported positive results. So in continental Europe, the same. And if you've traveled there, you'll see lots of places where the traffic is reduced or reduced in speed. You see a lot more cycling and a lot more walking. I'll move on to the next slide. We're on slide 11 now. We're picking up speed here. So social cohesion, I kind of touched on this. I think I've already touched on this. We won't take any more time on it. Let's move on to the next slide. Noise and air quality. If you've ever been particularly in Europe, where they have a lower speed limits, you'll notice that things are just quieter and more peaceful. Noise. So higher motor vehicles lead to greater annoyance, and it really does. When it disappears, you'd be surprised how much better it is. So lower speeds and reduced noise could result in positive changes in physical and mental outcomes, including lowering hypertension, basically stress. And I can certainly see that as. And then there's air quality, and this is pretty subtle what they're getting at here. So a 2017 study in the UK concluded that would be an overall improvement in air quality, leading to 54 lives saved and a reduction of 647 years of life lost due to reduced fine particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide emissions. This is basically as a result of getting some of those road users off the road and replaced by active transportation. Okay, so journey times. This is important because changing the speed limit, you think, well, there's going to be people that say, well, it's going to be a big problem. It's going to take so much longer to get where they want to go. Well, so will 20 mile per hour speed limit significantly increase journey times? Edmonton found this, and they've got lots of studies as well. But I'm going to use the Wales information because it was so easy to use. So Wales studies showed reduced speed limits do not significantly increase journey times. And basically the reason for that is overall point-to-point speeds in most urban areas are determined by delays at junctions rather than the sections of road between them. That's pretty obvious, but it's the speeding up and slowing down that's dangerous. So for much of the day in towns and cities, vehicles rarely reach 30 miles per hour for more than a minute or two before they're slowed by queuing vehicles or red signals. So again, that's probably pretty obvious when you think about it. So the truth is that it doesn't really make that big a difference. And most of the time where we're asking for reduced speed limits, it won't even be reduced that much. So additionally, so the Transportation for Wales undertook a study modeling journey time, and found that the impact on long distance journeys would be minimal. Well, there we go. So this is, I thought I would include this slide as well. This comes from Wales. I believe that we would find the same thing if we reached out to Edmonton or Calgary. There's been consistent public support for 20 mile per hour limits pre and post implementation. In a 2001 trial over 20 years ago of 20 mile per hour limits across Scotland, it demonstrated strong local support. Almost 3/4 of respondents considered that the experiment was either very or partially successful. Now, those of you in public planning would probably find that hard to believe that anybody would agree at a 3/4 rate to any policy. So seeing these kind of numbers is quite remarkable. I go on in the next point to say that, for almost the last decade, studies have showed consistently high public support between 62 and 90%.
I think we're off again, Elizabeth.
Oh, sorry, I'm on slide 14.
I'm on 14 now.
Okay. Okay, so this what we're trying to say here is that that there is in Wales there's a very deep support and consistent support before and after they implement a change in speed limits. I say that 3 or 4 different times in this same slide. I've said it already, so I won't say it anymore. I'm pretty sure that councillors will probably have heard this from people. I'd love to hear from Patty later on to see if she's been hearing it, and from some of the other people that work at the city. Okay, so this next, I've moved on to a slide that you don't have because I just wanted to emphasize a few things. So these are just like speaking notes. So 30 kilometers an hour is not arbitrary. Moving to 40 kilometers an hour is not going to change drivers' mentality. If we were to change to 40 kilometers an hour like Calgary and Edmonton, I think it would go unnoticed and we wouldn't see a behavioral change and we wouldn't benefit from especially the perceived change, which is really important, the perceived improvement in safety. Next point here is Toronto found that changing the speed limit just on a street or part of a street was ineffective. It needed to be the whole neighborhood. But from a learning perspective, it made more sense to change the whole jurisdiction. So Calgary didn't do it in a section of Calgary. It did it for all of Calgary. Edmonton the same. Amsterdam the same. Wales did it for the whole country in all of its residential areas. So, I'm just pointing out, 30 kilometers an hour is important. Widespread is important, not just in little areas. So my next thought here is I got to get this in here. Just because there are hurdles doesn't mean we should back down or give up. We need to push for a better place to live. And the last point before I move on to my last slide is, so I sent out, and you have attached in the latest version of the invite 3 documents. There's this one, the summary presentation, without these points that I'm talking to right now, but they're not really that different than what's in the rest of the presentation. There's a supporting document which is quite detailed and has links to a lot of different material. And finally, I also included the Welsh 20-mile-per-hour task force report, which is expansive, complete, and it has an enormous amount of excellent resources for committee members and staff and city staff, planners. Different people will dig different things out of it. It's a phenomenal workbook to start from. Okay, if start there, if anywhere else. So that was attached in the minutes or in the agenda. Okay, so I'm moving to the very last slide, and this isn't going to be a very good slide because this is what I think, and honestly, what the committee thinks is going to be a lot more important. So outstanding issues. We know that speed limits need to be set by the provincial government. And that is one big elephant in the room. And that's where there's going to be a lot of discussion. I look forward to hearing it. But I don't, this is too important to just, leave behind. Would there be exceptions? What criteria would there be? Perhaps we could consult with our other Canadian partners and see what they did. And, some of the details would be really worth, discussing with Alberta's big cities. And the last thing I have in here, because I just love to, put in a dig here, is as a complement to slowing down private vehicles. there should also be an initiative for higher speed, high quality public transportation in the HRM. So you can't just beat with a stick. You also have to have a carrot at the same time. So, you know, you got to kind of do both. They are related, but loosely related in this perspective. So I will stop there. I hope that this has piqued your interest. And I'm sure there'll be an interesting discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Yeah, it took a little bit longer than we were expecting. You were 25 minutes on that, but it's certainly a good presentation. It could lead to a good motion, and I'm wondering whether you want to put a motion at this point or whether we want a discussion first. The other thing to consider is that Lucas Pitts is here to give a perspective from traffic, and I don't know, should we hear from Lucas first, do you think?
I think so. I think so. I think that we should have a good discussion first, because honestly, I think that there's probably two motions that could go through. The one that was suggested, but there could be another one that could come out of this discussion.
Okay. Well, Lucas, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Perhaps you could give us your perspective on the presentation that you just heard.
Well, I think my perspective is gonna probably shut down the conversation pretty fast, because we have, unlike our colleagues in Calgary and Edmonton and municipal governments in BC and Ontario, we do not have autonomy from the province. There is nothing we can do to lower those speed limits to 30 kilometers an hour without petitioning the province on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, which takes a ton of efforts. In that case, we can only go to 40 kilometers an hour. We cannot go to 30 kilometers an hour. There is no way to do this. We just had a council report go in front of council. I think it was the last meeting. Councillor Cuddle can maybe confirm that, about trying to, what we could do for 30 kilometer an hour in school zones, and there is no avenue there for us either. I've been here for 2 years. I think we've written 3 times to the province to advocate for more control over speed limits on our city roads. I don't think from a city perspective, there is honestly much else we can do. Like I said, we don't have, Calgary and Edmonton can do whatever they want. They have autonomy from the province on what they do on their roads, as does Vancouver, as does Toronto. We are unique here in that we do not.
Okay. Paul, what's your response to hearing that?
Well, I think that's disappointing, honestly. You know, but it doesn't mean that we should stop. It doesn't mean, you know, there is there a reason that Calgary and Edmonton are different than Halifax, and more special and more capable than the Halifax HRM? Calgary's almost 1 million people. I believe Edmonton is too. The HRM is just, I think just this month tipped over 500,000. That's a big deal. That's a lot of people in a very small area with a very dense population and some difficulties in getting around a small place. So, you know, just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to push for whatever autonomy is required. Maybe it's more than just, you know, maybe there's, you know, I am relatively new to this committee. I am not, I don't see all the other areas where, you know, where our hands are tied by the province. But perhaps, you know, we need to look even bigger than that. You know, I see Patty has her hand up. She's always got good comments.
Yeah, Patty, would you go ahead with your comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lucas said it all. It's not that Halifax Regional Council is not supportive of lowering speed limits, and in fact, quite the opposite. Several motions have already been made. So I don't recommend making a motion, because we did just get denied again for changing speed limits this year, having blanket authority to set speed limits. So I don't think council is the place to direct the efforts. This was an excellent presentation. This was excellent information. I think that we need to direct that effort to the province and seeing if you can't get a meeting with the Minister of Public Works and you know, advocating at that level, because we've been there, we've tried this, it's not working. It's not that HRM is incapable, and it's not that HRM doesn't understand the issue, and it's not that HRM is less special than these other places. We just don't have the authority. It's in our charter. Our charter is you know, we're a product of the province, and if anything, what we've been seeing this past year is the province taking away our autonomy, not granting us more. So I agree. Yes, keep pushing and keep advocating. I don't think this advisory committee has the authority to go and petition the government, the provincial government for anything. I mean, I believe that the mandate here is set up to provide recommendations to municipal council, but that doesn't mean as individuals you can't go and you know, talk to the province. I mean, at least that's my understanding. Perhaps you know, it can be, Elizabeth can correct me on that, but yeah, I mean, you know, it is important, and we should keep pushing. It's just that I don't think pushing council is going to get you where you need to be.
Okay, thank you, Patty. I have 3 other hands up, and in order that they came up, I believe it was Milena, Douglas, and Brittany. So, oh, and now we have Annika. So, Milena, what's your comment, please?
Yeah, I have a very quick comment. One, Paul, excellent presentation. Make sure you're voting in the next provincial election, okay, my friend? I've lived here for 30 years in this province, and forgive me for everyone who lives here, but I think we're backwards. This province pushes the municipalities. I have trust in our HRM staff, most of them, and they can't get through or budge through. Second, Lucas, nice to meet you online. Sorry, my video is not on. I'm very not well. So I am blind. I travel with the guide dog, and with the increased amount of new residents we have since COVID, every week, I'm in an intersection that my right of way of crossing, and every week my dog has saved my life. This is the first dog who has had to work harder than any of my other 4 guide dogs to save me, because people are running the red lights, they're careening through the school zones, they're doing absolutely nothing. What to say about this? We go to the province. I completely agree that we don't slow down and we don't stop. I'm in full agreement. We need to slow everything in HRM down. End of thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Milena. Douglas, you had a question or comment?
Yes. So first of all, just a quick, I don't know if this is a question or comment for Lucas, but hypothetically, let's say the province gave us power tomorrow and suddenly we had authority to make these decisions. Does the overall sentiment seem to be that HRM is supportive of moving to 30-kilometer streets? Is that kind of the vibe we're getting?
You might want to direct that to Councillor Cuttle. I don't want to speak to Councillor. I'm just a staff member.
Fair enough. Councillor Cuttle, do you want to just give a quick yes or no on that?
Councillor, your sound is off.
There we go. I was just trying to see who was speaking there. It wasn't popping up on my screen.
That was me, Douglas Wetmore.
There you go. There, now I can see you. Sorry, and what was your question?
Hypothetically speaking, if the province gave HRM authority to make these decisions tomorrow, would this be something that HRM is interested in moving forward with? There seems to be overall positive support for this.
Yeah, there was positive support for, and Lucas, you, that last report that we got, I believe we were looking at permission to put all residential streets to 40. Is that, was that?
No, the last one was 30 kilometer an hour posted in the school zones.
Okay, and then
30
recently there was one for all residential streets at 40.
Yes, there was. Yeah, no, we've discussed this a lot in my short 2 years.
Right. So yes, there is a willingness to slow down the streets. Absolutely.
Would you say, when you said 40, was that more so a compromise to try and get a approval from the province? If that wasn't required, do you think there would be ambition to go down to 30 as well?
I can't speak for the rest of council, but I think with some good information, it's worth, bringing it forward and having that discussion. There is a willingness to try to slow down traffic, particularly on residential streets. Yes.
Very fair. The main reason I wanted to ask that was just to confirm that there is support on HRM's side. And with that in mind, I feel like my thoughts essentially align with what Councillor Cuddle already provided, which is, unfortunately, as much as I hate to admit it, our attention really does need to go towards the province on this one. Not necessarily the committee, but on an individual level. Next election, one of the questions I will be asking our potential electors will be this question: how can HRM get more power? Is this something that we can start getting move on? And I guess to Paul, thank you for the presentation. And hopefully I will see you at Province House one day, pushing for this even further. Thank you.
Okay. Brittany, you had your hand up. What's your...
I did, yeah. I just have a quick comment, and then probably Annika will be best to jump in after me. I have a feeling we were about to say a very similar thing. But this past year, so the province is working on the provincial active transportation strategy. We, meaning Cycling Nova Scotia and also Ecology Action Centre, have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to advocate for many things to be within that strategy, but lowering speed limits, having the ability for municipalities to lower their own speed limits is one of the things that's like top on our charts that we've been advocating for in this new policy. I mean, it's not just HRM alone that would be interested in it. We have had interest from multiple municipalities across the province in order to do this. So I'm going to leave it at that, and then I'll put it to Annika because I think she will be able to give a little bit more background than I can. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Annika.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, I'm very excited about this phone call and this conversation. It's definitely one that has been on a bee in my bonnet for a while, alongside the enforcement of this, which I think would be speed radar and red light cameras, which are two provincial things. I am allowed to say this, I believe, but I would invite anyone who wants to talk further about this, about going to those conversations about the province. I'm here for it. Please shoot me an email, because yeah, this is definitely something that is bigger than HRM, and that's where the needles are. And I think that, interestingly, there might be some leverage points, and there definitely are some internal conversations as well. So I'm happy to sit down and strategize and start working on a speed thing. I do know that apparently there is a loophole right now on the speed radar, which is 2 to 3 years away from being province-wide enabled, but apparently HRM is in the process of being a quote-unquote pilot city for speed radar, which is really interesting. Mi'kmaq communities are allowed to, they are exempt from that rule. And so Member 2 has a speed limit. I think it's 30, it might be 35. And it's amazing what that looks like. So we have examples in our own province of what this could do for a community. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there and just invite people to sidebar, not on this standing committee, to chat further about this. Thanks
Okay,
for the presentation. It was great.
thank you, Annika, and for the additional information as well. Do we have anyone else who wants to add a comment right now? I don't see that. Paul, I'm just wondering, based on what you've heard, where would you like to go with this now, if anywhere?
Okay, so that is a really good question. So it sounds very clear that, you know, having a motion from the ATAC is I don't know if it's a complete waste of time. There's a point in my mind to wearing down, you know, the provincial government with the same request over and over again. Eventually, they're going to say, "Wait a minute, this is wasting our time. This is what people want." So I'm not sure if I'm completely against, you know, putting a motion and just bugging them some more. But I'm also hearing that, you know, another solution might be to, you know, throw it out to anybody else. And I like your idea of getting a meeting with the Minister of Public Works. I don't see any reason, you know, when individuals reach out to ministers, sometimes it really gets their attention and poop happens. So, you know, maybe what I'll do is I'll put out I don't know. I'll leave the first point about whether it's worth sending anything from ATAC to the committee, and if anybody thinks that's a good idea, then we can do it. We're all set for it. It's already been set up. Then the second point, the second action item might be that I can send out try to coordinate a meeting with the minister. And when I get that, I can send out an invite to anybody here who would be interested in joining me.
Okay. And with regard to the first possibility then, which would be a motion from this committee, don't forget we report to the Transportation Standing Committee, and all we can do is make a recommendation to the Transportation Standing Committee. And I think we've already had some indication that it might not get any further than that, but it's still maybe worthwhile making the point and putting them on the spot, actually, if you like, because they in turn may be able to put the province on the spot. So do you have a motion ready to go? Paul,
my mouse is not working all that well with my application. Yeah, Elizabeth has done a great job at tuning up some language. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but I bet Elizabeth does. She's super organized. Elizabeth?
Hey,
got my
so
back?
I do have two of the motions. So the first one that we talked about was just about the first one that I don't think you would want to put on the floor now was a ATAC recommending that the TSC direct the CAO to prepare a staff report on this. That doesn't seem like it's in order right now.
No, actually, that's the one I think that we want to send up the line.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is
no.
I'm gonna put in the group chat the two motions that we had chatted about. And then we'll go from there.
Perfect.
That works. Just be a minute there. If anyone else, I guess, has any questions, I'll defer to you, Hugh, in the meantime.
Yeah, if we do go ahead with a motion, we will have to be fairly quick because the meeting's supposed to finish at 6:30. Elizabeth, are you going to put this
is
on
the
the chat?
initial motion that we talked about, Paul.
Yeah, I think you're right that
So the one that Elizabeth's showing in the chat, is that the one you want to propose? Paul?
It takes me about 3 clicks to get unmuted, so sorry about that.
Oh.
This is the one that we originally had. This is the one, that's just gonna, be to continue to nag. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that because it basically shows what we want to do. And, if it turns around that they say, no, you can't do that because it's provincial jurisdiction, then, they've heard it again that, that there's a serious interest in this, a broad interest in this, again, from a different area.
Well, in that case, time is short. I think you should move this, and hopefully you have a seconder.
Okay.
So if you're going to move it on the floor, Paul, you would have to read it out, and then we would be looking for a seconder.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. That I would ask that the Active Transportation Advisory Committee recommends that the Transportation Standing Committee direct the Chief Administrative Officer, CAO, to prepare a staff report on reducing speed limits to 30 kilometers per hour on all residential streets in the Halifax Regional Municipality.
Okay, and I see Lucas has responded that we did just that. Sorry, we did just do this last month, seeking 30 kilometers an hour in school zones. So yes, and I heard you say that earlier, but I think the point is we want to make a point here, and even if it's not going anywhere, this would make a point. So do you have a seconder, Paul? Is Brittany McLean is seconding?
Nope, sorry, that wasn't me. I actually just had a quick question. I'm just wondering if the best way forward would be to go straight to the province or like with local nonprofits like Cycling Nova Scotia and Ecology Action Center, we get to work along with the province quite often and we can bring forward those concerns. So I don't know, like if Lucas is saying that the staff have already written the staff report, I just don't know, having them complete another staff report saying the same thing. I'm not sure how much, if that would be a more direct route than reaching out to the province directly might be a stronger way forward. That's just my comment.
Yeah, well, certainly this committee cannot reach out to the province. And also the TSC will probably not take this recommendation up, and there won't be a staff report.
Just a point of order here that we have a motion that's being put on the floor.
Yeah.
In order to discuss it, you need to have a second.
Yes.
Otherwise, if there's not a second, it gets defeated and it's off the floor.
Yes, I agree, Councillor. So do we have a seconder? I'm not seeing that.
For the sake of the committee and moving forward, I'll second this motion.
Okay, Douglas has
here.
seconded it. We have very little time for discussion. But
I'm just going to put this option out there. We can have a motion to extend the meeting if you wish.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to end right at 6:30. If we would like to extend the meeting, that is an option as well.
Okay, well, let's extend the meeting by 15 minutes anyway. Do you require a motion for that?
We'll have to have that moved by someone, yeah.
Okay, would anyone like to move an extension? No? Apparently not. I don't get that.
I'll move for an extension of up to 15 minutes.
Okay, Paul, do we have someone seconding that?
I can second that.
Who was that?
That was Annika.
That was Annika.
Yeah,
thank you.
me.
Okay, those in favor of extending the meeting for the discussion, the motion. All those in favor of extending, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to extending the meeting, please say nay and or raise your hand.
Yay.
Councillor Cuttle has.
I need to go.
Yeah. Okay. All right. One
And Milena needs to go at
negative vote.
6:30 as well.
Sorry, Milena.
And Milena, I need to leave at 6:30 as well. Yes.
So it's 2 people voting against. So that passes. Let's quickly then move to. Did we get a seconder?
Yes, we had a
We
seconder.
did. Yeah,
We did.
Douglas.
I don't believe we moved for any further discussion though, and I'm not sure if any other discussion on this motion is necessary at the time.
Okay. Does anyone have any point to make in the discussion? Otherwise, we'll move directly to a vote.
Just Milena speaking here. I think Paul, it would be in the best interest, because I certainly will. I'm painting my lobbying card already, to hook up with Annika and Brittany, because I've known these women long enough that they can move rocks from hard places, and we can create a pretty strong force, I think, along with the rest of the committee who wishes to join in. End of thought. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Milena. And of course, that can happen in addition to this vote. Okay, hearing no more. Annika, have you got your hand up? Okay. So if there's no more discussion, let's just move to the vote on the motion. You have seen the motion and you've heard it read. Those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
If everyone, sorry to interrupt you, if everyone could say aye if they're in favor or nay if they are against, just because we can't necessarily see everyone raise their hand.
Yes, okay. Those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay.
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 Nay. Was that 2 people opposed?
I think it was more than 2.
Can we
Milena?
clarify who is voting? I think I heard 2 ayes. I think it was Paul and a second person was in
Miles.
favor.
Yes.
Miles, okay.
Douglas didn't say aye, even though you're the seconder.
I felt like it was important to move forward with a little bit of conversation, but after the final comments, ultimately, I agree with Councillor Cuttle that I don't think there's much point at this time. If there wasn't a report done within the last month, I would have supported it, but ultimately I decided against it. I was very on the edge though.
Okay. So I'm not sure now. Obviously, we had several, 2 or 3 aye votes, and
I think
2
we
or
had
3.
2 ayes, so we had 2 in favor, I believe, and then we had
Yeah, but
maybe
nay
4
from
or 5
Milena
against. I had Milena,
as nay.
and we
Yeah.
have
And Councillor Cuttle, yeah.
Councillor Cuddle.
Yeah. And several people
Douglas, I believe,
didn't.
was nay.
The other Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Pugh, the other Elizabeth.
Elizabeth was a nay.
Yep.
Okay.
Annika and Brittany, I didn't have their vote recorded.
Not everyone voted, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to abstain if that's possible.
Yes. So,
I'm not sure if you were able to abstain.
oh, really? Okay.
Not sure.
Well,
Then I'm going to say nay for the above reasons, but also I would love to circle back and pass this motion in like 6 months.
Okay. So
Yes.
those people, sorry, Brittany?
sorry, my vote, Elizabeth, if you didn't get it, I also voted nay, but only because I feel like Annika and I can probably be of help here and help you go forward with it, Paul. Like I'm not against the decision to do that, but I think like, oh, there's a really good way that we could help you out with it.
Okay, based on all that, the motion fails. And I think we have to finish at this point. The date of the next meeting is, well, has been, we voted on that earlier with the 2024 meeting schedule, so it's in January. And with that, we need a motion to adjourn. Someone.
I can put that motion for you, Hugh.
Thank you, Douglas. No secondaries required. So thank you, everyone. Sorry, that was a rather inconclusive meeting towards the end, but very valuable discussion nevertheless. And I hope to see you all in January.
And the date of the next meeting, just to clarify, is January the 18th, 2024.
January the 18th.
January the 18th. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'll say goodbye to everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.